Okay, so we're going to talk about observability now. So as part of observability, we have provided flow statistics and resource statistics for quite a while now. David, do you want to talk to us about flow statistics?
Yeah, so flow statistics, that's all about monitoring what messages go through your flow, how they go through your flow, what route they take through your flow, things like that. So you've got your 3 levels. You can look at your whole message flow. You can say, okay, what number of messages went through the flow? How long did they take? Did they finish an error? How many commits did they do? Things like that. Then you've got the same thing for nodes. You can say, okay, how many messages went through a given node? How long did it take in that node? So you can really drill down and say, okay, if I've got a flow that takes 10 seconds, where are those 10 seconds? You can find 8 seconds end up in a compute node.
Hopefully not 8 seconds.
Well, hopefully not 8 seconds, unless it's doing a huge database transaction. But just as an example, that's what you do. You've also got threads and you've also got terminal level. So you can really see in detail, how your flow is being used, how many threads it's using, which terminals, which routes it's taking, things like that. So you can really power in, and that's really useful for customers, isn't it, Ben?
Absolutely, and they've been using it quite happily for quite some time now. So as a technology, really great, and I'd advise everyone to play around with it if you've not seen it already. I guess apart from the levels of the stats, there's also a couple of time periods that we often tell folks to use. And one of those we refer to as archive, and that's more intended for production usage. And then we also have a snapshot setting, which just gives you pockets of data relating to 20 seconds worth of activity. And that's quite often useful if you're trying to zoom in on the performance of a particular small part of your flow.
Yeah, and I think what you're saying about archive, that's kind of normally like an hour people take archive stats on. And so they just got slow burn, long-term trend analysis really from that. And I think that leads into a good one of how do you actually get access to these statistics?
Totally, yeah. So if we wind the clock back, originally when we produced this feature back in the days of 2.1, I think, at that stage we had SMF record generation on Z, but then more recently MQ as a publication format, MQTT, file in a sort of CSV style of layout,
well, when you're publishing, you can also publish out as JSON or XML. So you've got
a couple of different formats of the data as well. Yeah, absolutely.
But I think also you're about to talk about publishing to ALK.
I was going to say, I think that was the last one and the mental block on the name. Yeah.
So we can now enable stats through the web UI. So there's been some recent changes in the web UI to allow this. Ben, do you want to talk about that?
Sure, yeah. So one of the things we found with statistics originally was it can be quite confusing for the lay user or the new user of the product, simply because there's so many different levels that you can set that data at. So you could go right into individual flow level.
Yeah, you've got server level, you kind of server, flow, node, server, application, flow. So,
and apart from that, the difficulty is rather than having to just keep your head around 3 levels, it's the fact that you've got inheritance happening. So by default, if you've changed a level at a higher level in the hierarchy, it would apply to everything beneath that. So it's easy to fall foul of that if you're not familiar with what's going on under the covers. Yeah.
The other top statistics are resource statistics that we have. So Ben, do you want to?
Sure, yeah. So I guess the first thing to say with the resource statistics is if we think about an integration server, the main runtime process, that's got several resource managers inside of it. And typically a resource manager is the way that we talk about how we interact with a third-party system. It can be an internal component, but most typically it's a third-party system. And each one of those resource managers also lets us publish stats to let us know how it's performing. So typically where we use flow statistics to see sort of minimum, maximum, average, elapsed time, that kind of thing, resource statistics, can't even say the word, tends to be more about things like memory usage, which is particularly pertinent for the JVM, for example. Think of another example, file nodes. We have a resource manager there that helps you gain insight into how much data has come into or out of the file.
Yeah. How many connections are being used as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, email. Now, how many emails have I read over time from this email server?
And there's some nice little sort of funky charts that you can see in the web UI to plot that kind of thing as well.
Yeah, and also the other thing is this resource statistics, similar to accounting and statistics, the flow statistics, you can publish them out. You can go over to MQ, MQTT, JSON, XML. You can write them to ALK. You can write them to file for CSV as well. So you've got all these different ways to access it depending on what works for you.
So one of the other things we've added in version 12 is the admin log.
So for many years, people have said, okay, I can do all these administrative commands remotely. How do I know who did a particular command, when it happened, what changes were made? And so during the 11 fix packs, we added this concept of admin log. And so you can now say, okay, right, Ben came in that day, he deleted all these critical
I'm sure
production
I didn't
applications.
delete anything, David. It wasn't me.
Yeah, I think it was though. It says here in my admin log it was you, and it said the date you did it and why you did it. The fact you had it said because of Sanjay, you told me to do it.
I think those kind of tags are really useful though. So when you view that table structure in the web UI, being able to tag data with particular users or particular roles.
Yeah.
Of course, activity log's been around for quite a while as well, hasn't it?
Yeah, so that's activity log, similar idea, but that's more at the flow level. Yeah. So you can see at a very high level what your flow did. It read data, it wrote to a database, it sent an MQ message, it committed. And that's sort of what you get out of activity log.
Having that first point of control is always handy in integration circumstances because most typically, as I'm sure our viewers will attest, it's always the integration team that gets the blame, right? We sit in between of all the other applications. So having a very good handle on how we're interacting with all those systems and particularly being able to zoom in on particular protocols, I think is really important with those kind of views.
Yeah.
Should we talk about some other capability we added? So in version 11, we had record and replay. In version 12, we had business transaction monitoring. Let's talk about record and replay that we did in version 11.
Yeah, so record and replay has been in the product
for
many years. We did a bit of re-engineering with it in version 11. But record and replay is really about, okay, I'm putting these messages through, and every time a new message comes in or goes to a particular node, you want to take that message and save it into a database. Whether that's the DB2 database or an Oracle database, you can take these messages as they go through the flow, and you can either pull out particular correlators or information about these messages and store it away, or you can take the whole data, or you can take little bits of the data. So really, it's really good at just for monitoring the data that goes through your flow.
I think personally, when I've used it, it's much easier in version 11 and version 12 to configure it. So in version 10, you have these complicated commands that you'd have to write on the command line. And now you make changes in the server conf YAML to specify
the database name, the topics you want to listen to. Obviously, it's topic based and actually works off of monitoring. And so that the monitoring powers
we kind of leapt into record and replay.
We did.
The underpinnings of record and replay is another feature that we've had for quite a while, which enables you to publish monitoring messages from the flows. And when that data comes out from the flow, you've got all manner of different choices about the shape and structure that it should take. So if you only want particular monitoring messages to get published, you've got the ability to apply dynamic XPath expressions. And you can also switch these things on and off very dynamically as well. So we have profiles that you can do in order to activate monitoring too.
Yeah, and obviously the thing with monitoring is it doesn't have to be used for record and replay. Anyone can set up their system to publish monitor events, MQ, MQTT, similar as what we did, right into file. So you can get access to them and you can record them into your own database structures or use them for your own monitoring, your own notifications somewhere else.
And monitoring also forms the basis for business transaction monitoring as well, doesn't it? So do you want to say anything about that?
Sure, yeah. So business transaction monitoring is a feature that's aimed a little bit more at kind of an administrator or a business user of the product. And it's really about getting out some of the key performance indicators that show how one or multiple flows are all behaving in conjunction with each other. So as many architectures will have actually multiple message flows that kind of execute one after the other. So having an ID that's carried with that data as it flows through multiple flows is one way that we have under the covers of being able to track that data as it goes through those different stages in its life cycle.
Yes, the global transaction identifier that's used in specific monitoring events.
That's
so
right.
that you can link the different monitoring events as a single transaction.
So I guess if we sort of step through what the user does, they begin by making sure monitoring is turned on, and they define some of these events, which define whether or not a business transaction is starting, in progress, or complete. And then they probably go to the web UI next.
Yeah. So what if you might have say multiple message flows, maybe three. You're placing an order or you're taking an order. So customer enters an order, it comes into a given message flow. So you use your web UI to create a monitoring event and say, okay, right, this monitoring event emitted from this node is perhaps my start event for my business transaction. So you create your business transaction policy or your business transaction definition inside the web UI. Say this message flow emits an event that's the start of the transaction. You've got another message flow that deals with perhaps taking payment. And then as that perhaps it publishes its own message event, you say, okay, right, if I get this event and it's got the same correlator, that means the transaction's in progress. And then perhaps there's a shipping flow that deals with sending it off to the local courier, and it emits an event, and you configure, say, that event is the end event. And so then you start up your business transaction monitoring, and it will correlate, it will take in all those events, look at the global coordinator in all of them and say, okay, well, I've got a start, I've got a middle, and I've got an end, and my transaction's good.
Yeah.
I was going to say maybe, and then magic happens.
Yeah.
But if we don't wave our hands and say magic happens, we need to say a little bit about what happens to the data after it's been published. So we take those publications off message queues, put them into a relational database, and then we've got some fantastic sort of views of that in the web UI.
The web UI has been greatly enhanced to provide those views so you can see the state of those transactions.
Yeah, and you can query on them, you can filter on them, you can say, okay, which ones have failed, which ones are in progress, which ones are completed. You know, look at the time spent doing them. You can graph all this sort of data, so you can actually do a really high level view of these transactions. So I think the other thing worth mentioning is we've got our built-in business transaction monitoring, but also we can publish out messages for open telemetry or open tracing.
Open tracing, yeah, we might be here a while talking about that topic. So I guess the tradition of the product has always been that we want to fit in very well with other vendor tooling. So
connect anything to everything.
Connect everything to everything, and any vendor in the middle that wants to do that. And one of those big shifts in the industry at the moment around observability is being able to conform to some open standards in that space. And open telemetry, as we now call it, was open tracing for a while and has now been kind of rebranded to open telemetry, is really about how you can track that data, sounding familiar at this point, through not only multiple flows running inside App Connect Enterprise, but also as it goes between multiple applications. So rather than necessarily just publishing data on a topic in the way that we were describing a moment ago, this is really much more about carrying an identifier with the message as it flows between those different apps so that we know that they're related to one another as it has that activity going.
So you can kind of track your message when it first arrives through, I don't know, a gateway somewhere, a gateway product, API Connect, perhaps goes on to an MQQ, gets read by us in App Connect Enterprise, calls a database, calls off to Kix, goes back on the queue, and you can track your message as it goes through all those different stages and see where it took your time or where it got stuck or anything like that. Which
makes it even easier to conclude that Ace wasn't at fault for whatever happened.
Right, of course, yeah.
And there's this great product called IBM Instana, which uses open telemetry, and we've got a video actually which shows how you can use Ace with IBM Instana, so check that out.
Yeah. And I think, the final thing about observability, if none of these options suit you, we've also got our user exit interface. So you can write your own C exit to actually do your own monitoring as well.